Good morning. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. I have the pleasure of having the next 3 days off. This never happens, but I simply requested to take some days off from work because I need a little mentee bee. I need a little mental break. So for the next 3 days, I literally took days off to do absolutely nothing. And I'm so excited about that. So that's what I'll be doing. Obviously, I'm gonna be reading, and I thought, okay, I love those videos of people that are like swapping screen time for reading, and I want to do one of those videos. And I've always wanted to do one, but I feel like for me, a week is so long. Not that it's long, but it's like I work every day, and so sometimes fitting in reading is actually kind of hard. I would love to swap working time for reading. That'd be great. So I'm gonna do swapping phone time for reading. What I really need to do is swapping TV time for reading, because I don't spend that much time on my phone, but I definitely am like a TV watcher. So I think I'm just going to swap my screen time for reading. So today's Saturday, so I'll use last Saturday for the first day. Today is the 27th, right? Yeah, today's the 27th. Last Saturday, the 20th, it looks like, let me see, last week's average. Okay, last week's average total screen time was 24 hours and 44 minutes. I'm probably only gonna do 3 days. I think I'm gonna do Saturday, Sunday, Monday, because those are the days that I'm off. Then I go back to work on Tuesday. So we'll do from last Saturday, last Sunday, and then last Monday. Last Saturday would be the 20th. So that, it says I was on my phone for 3 hours and 56 minutes. 3 hours and 56 minutes. It's funny because the categories, like messaging is 23 minutes. I guess I do text a lot. AMC Theater, 17 minutes. What did I do Saturday? Oh, Saturday, I think I did go to the movies on Saturday. I don't know why I was on there for 17 minutes. That seems weird. Chrome, internet, 17 minutes. Letterbox, 14 minutes. Probably looking at reviews for the movie I saw. That was probably what it, every time I watch a movie, last Saturday I watched ISS, and every time I watch a movie, I just go straight to Letterbox after, log it, and then I look at the reviews, especially if I thought the movie was bad. I love looking at reviews on Letterbox. It's one of my favorite things to do because the reviews are so funny. Like, I don't need a critical, thought out review. I just need a one-liner, a funny one-liner, and you got me for the Letterboxd reviews. Instagram, 12 minutes. Duolingo, because I'm trying to learn Spanish, 9 minutes. Mail, 8 minutes. I guess my biggest thing is like texting. But I'm like, who was I texting? I have no idea. Social, 50 minutes. Entertainment, 26 minutes. And utilities, 24 minutes. So it's not like I have like hours of TikTok. TikTok's not even on here, which is hilarious. TikTok, I guess I wasn't on TikTok at all on Saturday, so that's good. It says I need to read for 3 hours and 56 minutes today. Oh, what I'm reading. I started Yellowface, finally. I'm so excited. I get nervous to start really popular books because I'm either gonna love them or I'm just gonna think they're mid or hate them. But it makes me sad when I think a book that is really popular is like kind of mid. Because I'm like, oh, I mean, obviously everyone has different reading experiences, but there are some books that I've read where I've been like, okay, this is like, whatever, it's kind of mid. I didn't get the same kind of like that everyone else got. But I don't know, I'm really liking Yellowface. I started this because one, I've been wanting to read it, and two, I wanted to read some of the Goodreads Choice Award winners. I am 95 pages in to this book, and it's interesting because I realized I like reading books about writers, but I don't love reading books about the publishing industry or like people trying to get into the publishing industry. As a person who has tried to get into the publishing industry for years at this point and has worked in the publishing industry, like it almost like upsets me almost. Maybe there's like a little jealousy there, but like to read about people that like, oh, I applied to one job and I just got it. And I'm like, how? Sometimes reading about people like getting into the publishing industry is a little bit like disheartening for me, or a little bit tough to read about, because I've never read a story about someone struggling to get into the publishing industry. That's what I want to read, because that to me is realistic. This is like kind of a mixture of that. R.F. Kuang, like, she clearly does her research. Like, she's in the book world. You know what I mean? Like, she's a book girly. That's what I get from this. Like, she knows the ins and outs of publishing because she's published multiple books. And I feel like she knows the marketing aspect. She knows the social media aspect. She knows, like, just all book Twitter, but like all the conversations around it. And I feel like that is like in this book. I'm like, oh, you are informed about, like, you're in it. You're in the world of the book world, I guess I would say. So interesting because you're reading from like the white character's perspective, like the white protagonist. And it's like some of the things she says, I'm like, be fucking for real, girl. Like, what you're doing, not necessarily the greatest thing. And I like the term they say, cultural leeching. I was like, oh, I don't think I've heard of that one. I've obviously heard of cultural appropriation, but cultural leeching, I was like, oh. I think everybody knows at this point what this book is about. But basically this girl named Juniper Song, she has a friend. I would call them like frenemies. And her name is Athena, and she is Asian. And Athena suddenly dies, and Juniper gets a hold of this girl's manuscript for her next book. And Athena is like a published author. Like, she is like a sensational author. Like, she is that girl. And Juniper is just not. And so she finds a manuscript of Athena's like next book. And it's about like labor workers in, I believe, China. And she decides, I'm gonna use this story to write my own kind of thing. I'm gonna add to it, and I'm gonna publish under my name. That seems a bit problematic. First of all, you're stealing. That's just like, let's just call it what it is. She's changing the character because the girl that wrote the book, that wrote the book that she found, the manuscript, is Asian. So it's an Asian story. And I believe it's a Chinese story. I don't want to misquote it, but yeah, so it's about the Chinese laborers during World War I. So it's a Chinese story. And this white main character just took that story and is like making it her own in a way. She definitely still keeps like some of the Asian characters, but she turns some of the Asian characters to like sympathetic farmers. And I'm just like, girl, what are you doing? So it's just interesting to read in her, like, from her perspective, because you're just like, girl. There are some parts where I'm like, I could understand how she could be like jealous of this girl when Athena was still alive, because she says Athena has had this sensational career and this girl, Juniper Song, like wants that. She published a book and it wasn't like, it didn't do that well. When we first meet her, I understand the need to compare yourself to others, and her doing that, comparing her career to Athena's, and I understand that feeling. As a person, as a human being, I understand that feeling. But the lengths that she takes it to with like stealing her book and her manuscript and not telling anybody, trying to get her mom to like not publish her journals, she's taking it a bit too far. Okay, so, and then posing like her and Athena were friends, so it makes sense that like Athena would have influenced like some of Juniper's writing, and them changing her name to make it sound more ambiguous. Juniper Song, it was like Juniper like Hayward or something, and then change it to Juniper Song. Be fucking for real. Like that kind of stuff, I'm like, what the fuck? I would love to get a good dent into this. It's incredibly readable. R.F. Kuang is an author that scares me. I tried to read The Poppy War, and I love it, but I haven't finished it because I feel like I struggle with fantasy. I don't read fantasy all the time. And so I struggle with that a little bit. And then like Babel, I'm scared to even pick up Babel. So I didn't know how I was gonna do. I didn't know how I was gonna fare with Yellowface, but it's incredibly readable. And it's just, I'm just like eating it up while I'm reading it. I think I started like a day or so ago and I'm already on page 94. So I am determined to get a good ways through this. I guess as much as I can in 3 hours and 56 minutes. 114 pages into Yellowface. And it's really making me think about some things, which is exactly what the book is supposed to do. And, you know, this author, she is writing about these Chinese labor workers during World War I. And she has seemingly done her research, she says she has a bibliography, all of that. Great. You know, and then someone asks her at a like signing, like, what gives you the right to write about this as a white woman? And, you know, she has her rehearsed answer, so it's like all performative or whatever. And, you know, it gets me thinking, like, if people are doing the research, can they write about these things? And in my opinion, if you're doing the research, if you're doing the actual research and you don't make the characters just like stereotypes of what you believe a certain race or ethnicity or person to be, then it's like, obviously we want inclusion. That's great. But the problem that I have is that it's hard to believe that anything that she's doing is genuine because of the fact that she stole this manuscript. And I think that's the point. This like Asian group asked her to come and like speak at their book club or whatever, with their group, and they do a Q&A. And she says like, this could be good, this could prove, and it's all, some of the stuff is like, okay, she's just doing it because she wants to prove that she like is coming from a good place. But it's all steeped in the fact that she stole this manuscript from an actual like Chinese person. So it's like, she's like, this could be good to me. This could prove to the Twitter conspiracy theorists that my support for Asian Americans isn't an act, that I wrote The Last Frontier because I've studied the history and because I care about the community. Okay, so that's all fine and dandy, but you wouldn't have cared about the community or even cared about this manuscript or like thought about this story unless you found the manuscript. You know? Right? Also very interesting about like the Twitterverse, book Twitter, and talking about how people are a lot more brave when they're like behind a computer, which I do think is very true. And it's so interesting to read about that aspect. You know, the book is out now. And so it's like, it's getting critical acclaim. She says she has a 4.89 on Goodreads, which is wild. This is before her book comes out. And then, you know, the reviews start coming in and there's a couple like 1 stars or whatever. And that all comes with the territory, I think. So now she's dealing with kind of like the backlash when people start to question your like, not morals, but your motivations for writing a story like this. And in my brain, like if she didn't think that that was going to happen, then she's just Delulu. Like you're Delulu. Like you're writing a story that is not inherently of your culture. You're writing a story that is about a completely different culture and a completely different time period. People are going to question that. The fact that she's so like flabbergasted. I'm like, girl, you're writing about Chinese labor workers in World War I. You're a white woman. Like, of course people are going to want to understand your motivations and why this story interests you, and if you did justice to like this story. And Kuang is a queen, okay? Because she mentions a review, and I'm wondering if like she's read a review like this, but she mentions a review that says it's just so good. I'm like, wow, that's like a real review that I feel like I would have read. It's like a review for the book that the woman wrote, The Last Front. It says, The Last Front hardly breaks new ground. Instead, it joins novels like The Help and The Good Earth in a long line of what I dub historical exploitation novels, inauthentic stories that use troubled past as an entertaining set piece for white entertainment. And I'm just like, damn, she cites real life sources. And for her to mention The Help is so smart and so genius, because that book was written by a white woman, and it's just, there's a lot of interesting takes on that book and then making it into a movie and Viola playing the character. And so I think it's so smart that R.F. Kuang mentions like The Help in this book. R.F. Kuang has her pulse. She has her pulse like on pop culture. She just writes like she is in the center of everything. Like she references Scarlett Johansson and says corporate wants you to find the difference between these two images, LMAO, Ghost in the Shell reference. Like the way that she references pop culture and things that have happened, I'm just like, girl, you're in it. I'm only 143 pages, and at page 142 I was like, this is a 5-star. Like, this is a 5-star. Like, R.F. Kuang, she did it. Like, she understood the assignment and she didn't come to play. I will be reading everything. So I have officially finished the 3 hours and 56 minutes of reading that I needed to do for today. And I'm on page 240, chapter 18 of Yellowface. And my camera was charging, so I actually read a little longer. I'm gonna time like how much extra I read. I don't know if I'm gonna like take it off from like the next day or what, but I read an extra like 49 minutes. I read an extra 49 minutes past like 3 hours and 56 minutes. Basically, I read close to 5 hours because it was like basically 4 hours and then anyway. But this book, I don't even know like what to say because it's so good and it's so readable, and just like the command that R.F. Kuang has on just like book Twitter and the publishing industry, just like the command she has over everything. Like she just knows all about everything, and she's writing as if like she's experienced all of this as far as like the stuff on book Twitter. It tackles a lot of things like criticizing the publishing industry and white authors and appropriation and plagiarism and book Twitter, booktube, just the book world in general. It's just so good. Like now I understand it, and it's just so funny because like the pop culture references, like she keeps referencing Dunkirk multiple times, and it's just so funny because like I love Nolan, but I will say he doesn't know how to do women characters, and his characters are predominantly white. And if you've watched any of my other videos this year, you know I loved the movie Oppenheimer, but those other things are also true. He does not have a lot of diverse films and not very many women. I don't even know if Dunkirk has one woman in that film. It's just so interesting that like they're bringing him up, and then they bring up like Ghost in the Shell references. It's just like her command of pop culture is so amazing to me, and she keeps surprising me too because like, you know, we're not really on the main character's side like at all, because she does things that are just like, girl, what are you doing? And there's a lot of microaggressions with her, but like there are parts of her that I feel a little sympathetic to in a way, but then she just does something where I'm like, girl, no, enough with the tears, enough with the victiming. Like, and again, the manuscript was stolen. And the crazy thing and the problem with all this is that the doubling down. It's the doubling down for me that always gets me. And that's what she does. It's a great book, and I really would like to finish it today, honestly. I'm enjoying myself. I'm just loving it, and I think everybody loves it at this point, and as they should. So, like I'm saying, R.F. Kuang is really like that bitch. Like, she's just that girl. This book is giving me so much anxiety. I feel like I've had so much anxiety reading this, and I don't know why. I feel like the book has just been building and building and building, and like now it's turned into like a weird ghost story, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is so overwhelming. so overwhelming. Everything that's happened, all the social media stuff, like that shit's so overwhelming to me. Just how in-depth people get on social media, especially like Twitter or even Instagram. And it's just like, sometimes it's so much. I'm just like overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed by this book. It's amazing. That book is amazing. But it's giving me so much anxiety. Like I'm scared. Like the character is scared. Like I'm scared. That's how it feels. Good morning. Happy Sunday. Happy second day off. I officially finished Yellowface last night. I spent the time this morning tabbing my annotations. Usually I'll just like annotate while I'm reading and then I'll go back and actually like tab it. This book, definitely 5 out of 5. I feel like it perfectly like encapsulates the time period that we've been in for a while, but especially the last like maybe 3-4 years with, you know, booktube and book Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, and it is a critique of the publishing industry as well, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that critique because so I went on Kuang's Instagram yesterday and I was like scrolling through because I am now a stan of Kuang, and she had posted her like thoughts on American fiction and doing satires and things like that, and that's a similar film which is based on a book called Erasure that also tackles kind of like being a person of color in publishing. That one tackles being Black in publishing and the boxes that publishing will put an author of color in order to sell books or whatever. And so I felt like the movie was a very good critique on the publishing industry. If you're in the book world, you watch that movie and you read this book and you're like, you like, yeah, like you feel like, oh, okay, this is definitely how it is, or you've experienced something like that. So it's just so interesting. And she had to put her thoughts on like her book after a couple years and American fiction, and she said she's also read the book. So I don't know, I just appreciated, because they have similar vibes in a way, that book, her book and American fiction, which Erasure is the other book, which I want to read. I have it here. I wanted to read it before I saw the movie, but I didn't get a chance to. But anyway, this is a masterpiece. In a way, I had so much fun. And I feel like that's, I don't know if you're supposed to have fun, but it's just like brilliant. Like her writing too. I'm like, girl, you are that bitch. That's what it feels like. And I have become a stan. So, and I'm not normally a rereader. Like I don't reread a ton of books, but I was reading this. I was like halfway through and I was like, I want to reread this. So I know a lot of people will at the end of the year reread books, some of their like favorites, to see if they still like feel the same way or just hold up. And I don't know, I might have to do that. I might have to do that with this because it was so good. I'm so glad I read it. I feel like I would have been missing out on something if I didn't read this. And it's funny because I do think the book also talks a lot about that, about how the main girl, Juniper, like she is obsessed with being in the limelight. Like that's all she really wants. And it talks a lot about how that feeling of, if you're not online, if you're not on social media, then you're going to be forgotten and that you don't exist and you don't matter. And it's crazy because, you know, social media is not necessarily real life, but she says something in here where it's like, social media is life. Like, what do you mean? And it's crazy that like we are there, you know? Agent, I think somebody says like, once you turn off your screen, nobody gives a fuck. And I always used to think about that. I always used to be like, nobody gives a fuck. Why am I posting this? Nobody cares. She is so set on like wanting to feel like people give a fuck. And social media is it can be a good thing and a way to connect with people, but it can also be a bad thing and it can harm us and it can tear us down, and it's just very interesting. And to talk about needing that serotonin boost that she gets from like a like or a comment or being in the conversation is wild to me. And I felt that before, like wanting your video or your post to get a like in a time like this, going through a pandemic over the last 3 years. Of course, that's our way of connection. We're literally trapped in our houses. Like it's a way to connect with people. She explores if that goes too far. I'm just absolutely in love. And I think everyone should read this. And I will be singing its praises forever. And I will be reading other R.F. Kuang books. Thought I didn't have a lot to say, but I feel like I'm more of a rambler and not like a person that has cohesive thoughts. So that's that. I love this book. 5 out of 5. 10 out of 10. Today, is Sunday. So let me see how much I need to read today. I might go to a movie later, or I think I have like a party to go to later also. I'm like, it's so weird. I wouldn't consider myself an antisocial person, but I would definitely consider myself an introverted extrovert. So like, I like being around people and hanging out, but there are just times when I just need to recharge. And like I said earlier, I explicitly took this weekend off to do absolutely nothing. So the idea of going to a party is a little bit hard for me. Even though it's my dear friend's party, but I'm like, oh my God, I have to get up and get dressed, and it's raining outside. My apartment is extremely comfortable, so that's a little bit hard for me. And it's not that I have social anxiety, it's just that getting up and getting ready sounds like a lot. Anyway, so yesterday I read for 3 hours and 56 minutes. Today I need to read for 4 hours and 51 minutes. For last Sunday, January says that TikTok, an hour and 43 minutes. I must have been like off work or something, because TikTok, an hour and 43 minutes, Instagram, an hour and 9 minutes, messaging 23. So social, 3 hours and 23 minutes, utilities, 19 minutes, information and reading, 12 minutes. That's so funny. The fact that like the day before, no Instagram, no TikTok. Then the next day is all Instagram and all TikTok. And you're wondering what book I'm gonna read, you might add. I think I'm going to just continue on with the publishing satire theme. I think I'm just gonna start Erasure. I have been wanting to read this for a while. I already watched American Fiction, and I wanted to read this before I watched American Fiction, but that didn't happen. I think I just want to read this now. And so that's what I'm going to be reading. Erasure by Percival Everett. And then he's coming out with a new book called James, which I have an arc of. And it is about the slave that's with Huckleberry Finn. So it's about a brilliant action-packed reimagining of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, both harrowing and ferociously funny, told from the enslaved Jim's point of view. When the enslaved, so it's told from the slave that's with Huckleberry Finn, named Jim. So I think that's such an interesting concept. So I will be reading that one also. But Erasure is what we're going to read today, and we'll see how much I can get done. 4 hours and 51 minutes doesn't seem like that long, but if I leave my house, it will be that long. But I also need to get breakfast, so I'll probably do breakfast first, and then we'll get to reading. Essentially like 2 hours and like 40 minutes left on the challenge. I'm not going to finish it before I leave my house. I'm like 60 something pages into Erasure, and it's really good, but the writing is definitely making me think, and I have to kind of slow it down to like understand what is happening. I think essentially like the film really highlights this family that is essentially grieving, and there's just like a lot of changes within the family dynamic. The film really latches onto that, and what I didn't realize is, in the movie, he writes this book called My Pathology by Stag R. Lee. Books that he normally writes are probably like literary fiction, pretty dense, and I guess the market doesn't like receive them very well, and so he's having a hard time getting his latest book, 17th book, I think, or maybe seventh book picked up by a publishing house. He keeps like seeing this other author who is played by Issa Rae in the film, who has this book called We's Lived in the Ghetto, I think it's what it's called. And he just is like, how is this selling? Like, why is this like the next bestseller? He's like, what the hell? This woman and the book keep like popping up in his life. Not like he runs into her physically, but she's like on a talk show that he sees, and then he sees her book in the bookstore, and he's just like, what the hell? So he sits down to write a book called My Pathology, and what I didn't realize is we get to read that entire book, My Pathology. In the movie, we see him writing it, and then they do like a montage of people like acting it out, but we get the whole book, and that's like an interesting choice to put the whole book inside your book. Let me see, the book spans, this is how much the book is, My Pathology, all these pages here. So that's a book within a book. So what an interesting choice. Now I'm going to read My Pathology and see what it's about. It is like 2 a.m. Okay. It's 2 a.m. and I just got back from my friend's birthday party. But that means that I did not finish the amount of reading I was supposed to do for Sunday. I still have 2 hours and 26 minutes left to read, and so I might try and get a little done now because I'm sleepy. I can never like go to sleep right when I get home, so I'm gonna try and read a little bit. Maybe I do have to call my mother, and then if anything I will tack this on to Monday. I think I only have to read like 2 hours or something, so I will check in with y'all in the actual morning hours of Monday. Morning, happy Monday. Usually Mondays are for movie Monday, but I haven't really been doing movie Monday this year. I think there was a point where I had seen everything, and so like there's nothing for me to see. There are a couple of movies here and there that I do want to see, but I woke up late and I had a late night, so I woke up late. I'm just gonna read today probably and chill. It's my last day off. I still have 2 hours and 2 minutes left to finish from like yesterday's swapping my reading time. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'll move on to the time I'm supposed to read for Monday. I'm still reading Erasure, and I'm on page 73. 73. I didn't read any more yesterday, so I'm just gonna continue that. And my goal is to finish this book today. That would be amazing. So I've got my coffee. That's all I really need. I've got my coffee. I've got my book. So let's get to reading. I am struggling through the book. Not the full book, but the book within the book. The My Pathology book. I am struggling because it's written so bad, and I think that's the point. Oh, it's so bad, and I know that's the point. But in the movie we didn't get like the whole novel, but we're getting the whole. And it's different in the movie. It's a different novel that he's like writing. But in this, like, what the fuck is this? It's even worse than in the movie. Like the novel he writes, My Pathology. It's even worse than in the movie. I'm having a time, y'all. I stopped reading because it's like I can only read a couple pages, and then I'm like, what the fuck is this? So I've been eating and watching Vampire Diaries. I have an hour and 12 minutes left for yesterday's reading. I haven't even started on the 2 hours for today. I might switch to another book, but the thing is I have to get through the book within the book anyway. So I'm just gonna try and power through. I also fell asleep. We'll see. I'll come back later. I was supposed to read for Sunday. It was 4 hours and 51 minutes and I made it to that. I'm now reading what I needed to read for today, for Monday, which is 2 hours and 17 minutes. I've already started, like I already put the timer on, and so I only have an hour and 44 minutes left. I mean, I should be done with that soon. I'm still reading Erasure. I was struggling through like reading the book that he wrote, My Pathology, because it's just all the stereotypes you could think of for a Black person living in a certain type of community. It was just all of those thrown into one. The dialect, the things that he did. Had 4 kids with 4 different baby mamas, like just all the stereotypes. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so hard to read. And I know that's the point. Like, that's the point of it. And he sells the book for like $600,000 or something like that. Some huge deal. The quotes that they say about it, such a real novel. It's so raw. And I'm just like, and that's the point. And I think it's hilarious. And it was very hard to like get through the actual book though. She said it was magnificently raw and honest. She said it's the kind of book that they will be reading in high school 30 years from now. She called it true to life, called it an important book. $600,000 offer. But like I said, this book to me is really about the family. Him writing My Pathology and all of that. Like that to me is just a small part of this book. And it talking about like family and family dynamics, and you know, he compares it to like a sinking ship. And I wouldn't say he's like on a sinking ship. I would say there's been a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes like in his family and a lot of hard things to deal with. And I think he's dealing with that on top of having to write this book and try and sell. He needs money. And he says, am I a sellout? Like, I wrote this book and it was supposed to be funny. It's a parody. And he's like, if they don't know it's a parody, then like, they're stupid. The masses, whoever's reading it, the publishing houses are stupid. And he's like, but I'm definitely like taking the money because his mom needs it. Very interesting kind of like feeling that he's going through of like, what do you need? What do you have to, in what like lengths would you go to try and help out your family? And he's a writer, so he's using what he knows to do that. And he may not be writing what he wants to write. He may not be writing the literary masterpieces that he wants to write, but he is still trying to understand why this other woman is like selling all these books and his books are not selling. And he's like, okay, I'm upset about like why I have to write in this box. So I'm going to make a parody of it and put all the horrible stereotypes of what it means to be Black in this book, and it works. And they're obsessed with it and they want to sell it, and it's hilarious. I am like 100 and on chapter 10 of the book, 65 pages in. So I don't know if I'll finish it tonight, but I definitely should get another like big chunk. Hi, it is the next day and I am officially done reading or swapping my screen time for reading. And if I did the math correctly, I read for a total of 13 hours. I did read for like an extra hour yesterday after the timer went off to finish Erasure. So I feel like I read for maybe 14 hours, which I was looking at my like thing today about like how much time I actually spent compared to like that last weekend, those last 3 days versus this last 3 days. And I feel like it's about the same. The funny thing is like I worked those other days, I think, and I didn't work these days. But I will say on days when I don't work, my screen time is usually way up, like way high. So I do think maybe it was better. I have no idea. I feel like it could have been higher if I didn't like set aside the time for reading. So I say it's a win. I also finished 2 books. I finished Yellowface, which is 10 out of 10. I annotated it and I love it. And then I kept with that theme and I read Erasure. I also annotated this. I haven't gotten a chance to tab it yet, but I think I'd give that book a 3.75, almost 4, 4 stars. Because I think the film does a good job at like cutting out the fat from the novel. And some things are different, which is fine, but there's a scene between Thelonious and the girl that writes "We Lived in the Ghetto" that we get in the film, but we don't get it in the book. Which I thought that the conversations that they're having during that scene in the movie are really important, and that's one thing that we didn't get, which is fine. But I still think it kept like the major themes and the tone. Definitely, I think the ending is interesting, and in a way, I want to see the movie again to compare the ending, because I don't remember the ending at all, and I think it's clever how the book that he wrote and the ending of the novel end in a similar way. I liked it. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad that I've read that. I'm definitely a fan of Percival Everett, and I have 2 of his other books, so I will be reading those. This experiment is over, and I had a lot of fun actually devoting time to reading, because I feel like I read a lot, but I feel like I don't get to devote like hours, like chunks of time to reading. I feel like I read like 30 minutes here or like on the train, but I don't necessarily sit as often as I would like just reading. So that was a nice like little vacation to just like sit and read. I'm gonna do this more, definitely. And I finished 2 great books. So, and they're both from my shelves. So that's the goal, finishing books that are on my shelf. So if you made it this far, thank you for sticking around. Please follow me on Instagram, please follow me on TikTok, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel, because again, this was really fun. So until next time, bye.